Okay, we're back with our 18th segment of the Ninth Age rules.
Number 18.
I'm Statler.
I'm Waldorf.
And we're here to talk about terrain features.
Terrain features.
Features.
Not just terrain, it's a terrain feature.
Yes.
All right.
So this section has been completely rewritten, but mostly in the context of using universal terms and simplification. But there are a number of subtle changes to the individual terrains that aren't necessarily marked in blue. That really make terrain act differently. So they define what open terrain is, which is basically everything that's not a other type of feature that is defined. So you have the catch-all, but open terrain is terrain.
Right.
Doesn't impact line of sight and no cover. It's affected. We get into impassable terrain, and there's a slight change here, which is now it's all impassable terrain is obscuring terrain.
Right. You can't see through it.
So you can't see through it. And before that wasn't clear. So you see people put up like a little monument or something that stopped movement. We've seen many games where somebody had a horde and they didn't realize something was in front and got stuck behind it.
We have to have one of those guys that manages that almost every game.
Yes. It was almost fun just to put stuff in front of them just to see if it gets stuck behind it. So that's a interesting terrain. Interesting change. You can't move through impassable terrain, of course, and you have to stop at an inch, which is kind of the same as it was before, until you move outside. Fields are a little different.
Fields were never really defined before.
Correct. You just had fences, and you'd have fences and fields. Mm-hmm. And now it's actually quite it does a lot.
Yes.
It's soft cover. If you have more than half your footprint in, except for large targets. It's dangerous terrain to cavalry, monstrous cavalry, and chariots. So you got to watch another hit on cavalry.
Yes.
Where you're charging if a guy sit up in the field, you're gonna take those hits.
Stack them up.
However, if half or more of your footprint is the field, you become flammable, which makes you
more vulnerable to
flaming attacks. Whether you're being shot at, and if you're re-rolling wounds, it's going to make actually flaming archers kind of very good against shooting at stuff in the field, because you probably don't have a great to wound chance, but re-rolling even 5s or 6s is a great thing if you got a good chunk of archers.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
And then
if you have flaming attacks, the fields become dangerous terrain to you.
Correct.
Okay.
So take the flaming banner, which is when we talk about magic items, you have the ability to decide if you want to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a change anyway, we'll get to that one. That's a change I'm not real thrilled with.
Right. So fields they're interesting. It is another hit on cavalry.
Although I haven't seen a lot of people adopt fields and start using them in games. I've tried to put one in every now and then, but
I think a lot of parts is we're not used to we haven't been disciplined using the terrain generation table in the rules. We're kind of doing the old, I got some fields and hills, just throwing them down.
Throw a bunch of pieces out there and scatter them. Yeah.
Or you're in a tournament where it's all predetermined, and they're still using the old. Correct. A wood, a hill, and something else.
I think the lack of that model, that terrain piece,
right?
People's collection also limits it.
They're very hard to make.
Yes, as we've seen. Yeah, the welcome mats.
The welcome mats, the way to go.
All right. Hills. Hills are obscuring terrain. Can't see over them. That's that old hills are infinitely high thing. It just clarifies it. They're obscuring terrain. You don't see over them. It's always been a problem we've always had is with hills. You used to use the hills or whatever height they are, and you could see over them if they were.
And most hills that people have are maybe an inch or maybe 2 inches tall.
Because if they're taller,
you can't put your guys on them.
You can't mount a unit on it unless they're in the exact right spot.
Exactly. So you get some cool looking hill, but you can't use it.
Correct. So I think this is it's a good change that clarifies it. Unit partially on a hill counts the hill as soft terrain to be shot at, and a unit completely off the hill counts the hill as hard terrain. This really is a little bit confusing on the second part. If you're completely off the hill, you count as being in hard terrain. The hill counts as hard terrain, but you can't see because the hill's obscuring. This one really only comes to play if you're shooting at a unit that's behind a hill and you can see, you're trying to see around the hill to see it.
Right.
That's where this comes into play.
Right.
Elevated.
Well, and it's nice, you can put your archers now, the front rank on the hill.
Correct.
Fire and volley fire, and you don't take the minus, but you get
You're getting minus to be shot at.
So it does it slightly helps archers.
It does.
Or blocks of them, at least.
Yeah. Models with more than half their base on a hill are considered to be large target for line of sight and cover purposes. So the cover purposes really comes to intervening units.
Right.
And line of sight, so you can
Right.
pretty much always be seen, basically, right?
Yeah, this section probably could be written a little clearer as far as the relationship of the cover versus the obscuring.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And the unit initiating a charge with more than half its footprint on the hill and ending the charge with half or more of its footprint no longer on the hill receives a +1 to charge combat score. Again, this is to stop that weird thing where you had one model on a hill and you count as charging downhill in the old rules. Not a major change, just kind of clarifies it.
Right. Forests are kind of the same as they were before. Soft terrain and dangerous terrain for cavalry, monstrous cavalry chariots, and units making flying move it. How dangerous terrain kind of works is a little different, but we'll get to that later. And then, as before, if you're in the woods, you cannot get steadfast unless you happen to have a forest rider, which we'll talk about later. Right. In skirmishers, as they were an 8th, they become stubborn.
I didn't notice
lone
this.
Characters if they're in the forest.
I did not notice that lone infantry character.
Yeah,
That's actually kind of nice.
if you can keep them alive.
I don't know how much that's going to come into play, but I actually never paid attention that the lone infantry guy gets that. All right, sorry.
Well, it's something you try to do. Sylvan elves are a good example where you'll often see people running around with individual characters.
Individual characters, yeah.
Sometimes it's the only way they can deal with certain threats. Yeah.
Actually, this
It can be good for monstrous infantry.
This
Good for a
actually
vampire in the woods. It'd be quite scary.
No, I mean, it could be actually a lone character could step forward and kind of block a unit from charging.
That's true.
It's actually fairly significant, I guess, if you in certain situations. Yeah, I mean, because hell, you know what? I'm actually not liking this rule a lot now. That the more that I look at it, I'm just looking at throwing a little cheap 30-point goblin hero in front of my unit in the woods. If he's behind my general, he's the 9 stubborn.
Right. Well, he has to survive.
He's got to survive, but he probably challenge off somebody and maybe survive.
Well, you can refuse a challenge.
If it's just a champion,
Yeah.
Oh, or the other guy can refuse a challenge. Yeah, that's
I
true.
want to make sure I kill this guy.
Okay.
But I mean, if it's an uber character or a very tanky character,
Right.
that can be a challenge.
Can be an issue.
Yeah.
All right. Ruins are hard terrain for any unit with half or more of its footprint inside, except for large targets. Dangerous terrain 1 for any unit except skirmishers, cav and monstrous cav. Oh, sorry, except for skirmishers. Cav, monstrous cav, and chariots treat ruins as dangerous terrain 2, meaning you fail on a 1 or 2 instead of
Correct.
just a 1. Okay. Again, no big change, but it's all consolidated, right?
Correct. Water. Water is can't march into it. It's same as basic water in the old game. It's dangerous terrain 1 for cavalry, monstrous cavalry, and chariots. If you're partially within the water feature, you can never count full rank. If the majority is inside the water feature, it's having 0 full ranks. Disorders for combat does not affect unit with Strider or Water Strider rule. So I think this is, it's written as blue, but I think it's quite similar. I guess it's the clarity of partial rank versus full rank.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, nothing major there, right?
Right.
Walls are hard cover for any model being shot at, except for a large target, which don't benefit from it,
Right.
with half or more defending the wall. If the shooter is at the flank, use the corresponding file or last rank to determine whether they're behind the wall or not. Ignore walls for movement, same as always, except for monstrous cav, and chariots, which it's dangerous terrain. This is a little bit of a clarification. In order to defend the wall, you must be aligned to it, and in base contact. It used to be you had to be within an inch of it or something, or
remember, you could be at an angle.
You could be at an angle which
stuff,
doesn't match it, so which caused problems. And models defending a wall get the distracting rule on the round of the charge, first round of combat, which means you're -1 to be hit, right?
So it doesn't mess with initiative anymore. You don't lose any other benefits. It's the -1 to hit straight up.
-1 to be hit. And if you already have distracting, it's doing nothing for you.
Right.
So, next section is buildings. Again, some fairly significant changes inside buildings. Buildings are obscuring terrain. You can't see through them. They're also hard terrain if you're behind them. Again, units comprise entirely of infantry, monstrous infantry, war beast, monstrous beasts, and swarms may enter an empty building. And you do that by getting into base contact during the remaining moves. There's no restriction, so you can do a march move to get to a building.
Which is a big change.
Yes, and you come in contact with the building, and then you pop into the building. The exception to that is you can't do it. No model may move more than 3 times its movement characteristic to reach the building. So you can't just clip it with one big horde unit, and then they all get kind of sucked into it, which is good. You can also deploy in that building if it's entirely in your deployment zone. A unit inside a building is always considered to have 1 rank, not a full rank, and 1 file. I think this is mainly for the being shot at things that affect ranks. Things that affect, like a bolt thrower or whatever, is going to kill 1 guy, hit 1 guy, no matter how many you got in a building. And I guess that would apply to a cannon too, right? How does that? Okay. Models inside a building gain the flammable special rule, which means people that are shooting at you are going to re-roll their...
It's blue here, but I mean, it was flammable before. But
it was, but I think...
the flammable rule is different. But
I think that might be why the flammable rule...
Excuse me.
Basically, flaming attacks are going to re-roll to wound against you. Right? Yeah. It's not the old flammable where it did multi-wounds to you. Basically, you leave a building, you step outside the building with your back rank touching the building, and that's it. You don't move any further. And no one can move more than twice their movement when they're leaving the building.
So no conga line out of the building.
No conga line, weird deployment to do something kind of out of the ordinary.
And you have to have your back rank touching the building, so you can't do like weird angles and things like that.
To try to cover something.
So you got to be a little careful with leaving buildings in close proximity.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a limit, because I mean, it used to be you could come out of the building and move.
Well, quite often it would actually propel your movement.
Yes.
So,
because you come up and touch it, pop in,
and
next turn
you
you
just bust, and all of a sudden you're popping out the other end.
Yes, in a different formation.
Exactly.
Yes, buildings were great before. If you're in a building shooting, there's no more of this how many levels it has anymore. Now you just 15 models shoot. Except, of course, monstrous models 5. But I think this is nice, because it used to be that defining how tall a building was. You forget to do it at the beginning of the game. Now
the folding fortress, they
banned
it in most tournaments because people were putting 100 archers in their buildings. So I mean that doesn't exist, but it was ridiculous when you see people just doing these ridiculous. Or they have this tiny little tower, and they said that somehow 50 guys could fit in there. So this is a much better rule.
Buildings are hard terrain for any units inside them as well. -2 to be shot at, basically. If any template touches a building, it is assumed to touch D6 models inside it. Even if it just clips the corner of the building, D6 models. Make it simple.
So it still makes you somewhat vulnerable being in buildings against template weapons.
Correct. Yeah. It actually makes you easier to hit with, like, rock lobbers. Any unit that's not entering, leaving, or assaulting a building treats
Well,
the
the
building
cannons
like
are better because
impassable.
you're probably not going to get D6 hits with cannons.
It's not a template weapon, so
it's
it
not a
doesn't
line
matter.
template. It's
Yes.
true. Yeah, it's a straight point.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Declaring and resolving charges against units in building. Normal rules. If you're in a building, you cannot flee. Move the charging unit in base contact with the building. Align and maximizing contact is normal. You're contacting with the building instead of the unit inside it, basically.
Right.
And then, of course, the building cannot be moved to when aligning units. So it doesn't conform to the charger.
Get magic buildings. It's supposed to be fantasy.
Yes. Mounts of any kind can't fight, may not fight the unit in a building in the ensuing combat.
Right.
And any of the fighting model will not benefit from impact, lances, light lances, mounts protection,
Right.
barding. So basically you get off your horse if you're fighting
Right.
a building.
It's kind of same as it was before in 8th.
Yeah. Doesn't help Cav much, does it?
No. It's in a building.
But it's fine. You're in a
It's
building.
fine.
You should be able to hide from horses in a building.
Yes.
All right. Each side selects 10 models to fight in a building assault. It doesn't matter, and of course that's reduced to 3 if you're talking about chariots, monstrous cav,
beast.
monstrous infantry, monstrous beast. Each one counts as 3. So I guess if you could add, you can do a combined between 2 units.
Right.
However you want to do it.
Or if you have a mixed unit, like
Correct.
the skinks and croxagores, whatever
And
they're called now.
monsters,
Caimans
ridden
and
monsters.
skinks, sorry. Yeah.
Yes,
Let's
caimans.
see.
Monsters and ridden monsters count as 6 models.
Right.
Then you declare them at the start of the build, at the start of the combat round. And then you just allocate. Each model can allocate its attacks to any models that are either in the assaulting or defending party. So this is kind of dangerous to send a character in because every model in the opponent's force can hit your character.
Right.
There's no more limit that, I think there used to be a limit that 3 or 5 can
right.
hit you or something to that effect. If you lose, like if I attack goblins against your elves in a building, if you kill 5 of my goblins, 5 more rank and
Right.
file step up. If you kill my goblin character, he's dead, he doesn't get to fight,
Yep.
no one steps up to replace him. But if you kill 5 rank and file, I still get my full
More guys
10
do-
guys.
Exactly.
Which, again, is a nice
Yes.
clarification. Units in a building count as having no ranks or steadfast. Standards, both ordinary and BSBs, only count if the model carrying them were part of the chosen fighting party. I guess this could be a weird situation where,
It's for BSBs.
well, no, I'm thinking about normal standards. If I send in, for instance, if I send in 9 goblins and I want my standard, if I send them in to fight somebody, that guy gets 9 wounds, I lost my standard, right?
Well, you can never, in the general rules, you can never lose your standard or your musician.
Yeah.
So I think the step-up rule applies.
So the step-up rule applies and keeps him alive?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would think, but probably could be written clearly.
Yeah.
More clearly.
The combat was a draw. This is a big change. If the combat was a draw, or the assaulting unit won, and the garrisoning unit didn't break, each assaulting unit can choose to perform a close combat pivot, ignoring the building. So it used to be that you would be stuck there. You bounce back an inch and you're stuck. Now you
Right.
can pivot away, and then be nudged back an inch from the building, or
You can stay in combat.
to stay in combat, which
Right.
is big.
Yes.
You can keep them tied up so they're not shooting you
Right.
if it's a shooting unit.
Right. Well,
Right.
it gives you, those units that have charge bonuses. The-
Oh, so well,
So you think about it: do I want to stay in, or do I want my charge bonus?
right.
You have a choice. So it's
You have your
flexible.
choice. If the assaulting unit won, and all enemies broke from combat or were annihilated, the assaulting unit can choose to enter the building if it's able to. Cav, of course, can't do it. Or to perform a post-combat pivot, again, ignoring the building, nudge back an inch. In the case of a multi-combat, it can pursue an enemy that was not in the building as an option.
Right, and the pivot's a nice thing.
And the pivot's a really nice thing.
So you can go attack something, and then you can turn and face,
right,
protect your flank.
This also gives you the ability, which you didn't have in the old rules, is in conjunction with this first section. You go in there, you kill a bunch of them, but you didn't wipe them out. Stay in combat, so the next turn when you wipe them out, you pivot in their phase.
Right.
It's that gives you that benefit of winning a combat in their phase.
And it's a pivot, not a reform.
Correct.
So,
and that's
important,
good.
Yes.
Correct.
Which means you'll be able to
charge following that. And then the last thing, if the garrisoning unit won, the assaulting unit passes a break test as usual or flees. If it doesn't flee, it just gets bumped back an inch. Right? Assaulting units are nudged back 1 inch and no longer engaged.
Right.
So, the building rules have always been kind of wonky.
Yes.
This is a decent set of building rules. It's better than what they've had.
It's still a little wonky.
It is,
but it's not something you can avoid in a formation game.
Right.
Without doing weird stuff like things broken in a skirmish formation, whatever, which would be a nightmare.
Right.
So I think the changes they made are definitely a definite improvement.
The one thing I don't
for buildings.
Yeah. The one thing that's not in here again is the limit of models that can get in a building. I don't like these big giant units of 50 guys swarming into a little building in the field.
That's true.
Which doesn't have the footprint to contain them.
That's true.
It's just a weird thing I'm not a big fan of.
Right.
So, anyway, I don't think it matters a whole lot, but...
Well, it helps people with, different types of buildings. So, I can see that. Yeah, it can be annoying if somebody's got a big horde of 25 millimeter guys and they've got a building that's a 3x2.
Well, but, a guy can stick a unit of 12 ogres into a tiny building.
Yeah.
Anyway, but all right. Well,
that's. Generally speaking, I have to say I like most of the changes of the terrain. The things are a little more deadly in a few cases with dangerous terrain checks. The obscuring with hills, so it's no longer you having to have the right size hill to block thing. I think is a big change.
It's a positive change.
The lining up the walls and the building cleanup is good. I will say I do kind of miss the magical terrain features of 8th. A lot of people didn't like that, but I would have maybe not as insane as the 8th edition's ones were. But I would have liked to see, and maybe they'll do that in the future as an optional rule for like scenarios or whatever.
And especially pickup games, I like the magical terrain.
Yeah.
And
not the 66 of them that they had, just a few.
Right. Well, in a tournament, magical terrain can screw you.
Correct.
If something comes up and it's one of those that actually hurts your army, in particular, it's terrible.
Absolutely.
So I can see it not being there in the tournament
absolutely
games.
In the tournament. And of course, this
but
set of rules is focused on tournaments.
And it is. So, add the option, if they add the optional rule like you were suggesting, maybe as an optional rule with few magical terrain pieces would be kind of neat.
I wasn't so big about some of the range, but I like some of like the obelisks and like little magic items on the field that which did stuff, and it just added a little bit of flavor.
Yeah, and the game was different because you either avoided this section, you tried to take advantage of that section.
I didn't like necessarily different kinds of hills, different kinds of woods. Right. Particularly, I remember a game where I was playing my wood elves, and I got on the flanks. All the woods caused me to be stupid.
Yes.
So
that wood strider helped you a lot in that term, didn't it?
Yeah.
Apparently, wood elves do have to be afraid of the woods.
Yeah. But otherwise, I think it did a solid job.
It was a nice benefit, a nice bonus to the game. Yeah. And there's nothing to prevent us, I guess, from using the old chart in a game as well if we want to.
We can always add our own stuff. That's true of any set. I'm just someone that I'd actually, you hear that a lot from people, though. Oh, GW was famous for this. Oh, if you don't like it, make your own rules.
Right.
Well, then you get somebody's visiting from another town, or you go someplace else.
Yeah.
And you start forgetting your rules versus the house where they start blending. So
correct.
I actually prefer that you have optional rules in the game system, so that's not necessarily necessary. I mean, there's always people who are going to change rules because they just want to change them.
Right.
But I think if you really want open gaming,
Yeah.
it's just nicer to have it there.
New guys joining the group don't have to know your house
They don't have to
rules
learn the house rules.
specifically, correct?
Like I said, and you then you don't have to remember which ones were your house rules.
Then you
because
just-
they become lore after a while. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're just telling the guy, we use the terrain special rules.
Right.
Instead of, well, we made this chart, and here's the chart, and, that whole thing.
Exactly.
But anyway, so that'll do it for terrain, I think, right?
Yep, that wraps up that section.
All
On
right.
to another one at some point in time.
So terrain is done. All right.